DevilNeverCry.
What is up everyone, it is me DevilNeverCry, and in today's video we'll be reviewing Kunitsu-Gami Path of the Goddess. Special thanks to Capcom for providing me with a copy for review. Kunitsu-Gami is a mix of hardcore action and real-time strategy / tower defense. Effectively, this is a game that, on paper, really shouldn't work. And I'll admit, even as I watched some of the trailers for this game, I definitely was curious but at the same time perplexed as to whether or not Capcom would pull this off and whether this would be a game that was actually fun to play, considering just how at odds these two genres are. What I will say though is that this game turned out to be a pleasant surprise. So what exactly is this game? Well, the narrative at least is fairly straightforward. An incursion of evil spirits have overtaken and overrun a slew of villages set upon a mountain range, defiling the once sacred torii gates that reside in each village and effectively turning them into a doorway of the underworld. It is up to Shrine Maiden Yoshido to go from village to village and cleanse the defilement by ultimately cleansing the torii gates. You play as her spiritual protector, So, acting as her standing guard as she dances through all of the villages, cleansing the torii gates one by one. Each village acts as its own stage, and in often cases, particularly towards the end, the villages are broken up into different sections with multiple different torii gates that need cleansing. The game works on a day and night cycle, in which throughout the day you can carve a path for the goddess Yoshido, leading her towards the torii gate that needs to be cleansed. You can save different villages by purging defilement from them. You can assign roles to these villagers, such as woodcutters or archers or healers and shamans. You can purge defilement from the village itself, netting you a prize if you're able to purge all of it throughout a different part of the stage. And you can assign a stage's carpenter to repair village defenses, or even assign people that you save to go fix parts of the village, allowing access into different areas. Effectively, what I'm trying to say here is that the day cycle of the stage is where you need to be planning and prepping, because once the sun sets and night falls, that's when the trouble really begins. During the night, a myriad of evil spirits begins to birth forth in waves from all of the different torii gates in any given stage, with one simple goal on their mind: the destruction of Yoshido. And so it's up to you to effectively control the battlefield. You're able to assign, as I've mentioned, different roles to each of the villagers, and you're able to place them anywhere that you specifically want on the map. This is also where the action aspect of the game begins to come to life. So is a very capable fighter, and so you're able to control him in real time to dish out all sorts of punishment on these evil spirits, oftentimes being the most impactful role on the board. Initially, you only have access to two different types of attacks. Think of them as light and heavy attacks. You're able to dodge, you're able to jump, and of course you're able to guard. But as you continue to play the game, you begin to unlock access to more and more abilities. You're able to change out the guard on So's sword, a tsuba, to effectively unlock different kinds of special attacks that charge up over time. But So's true capabilities come to the forefront when you finally unlock access to his skill tree. Unlocking more melee moves and attack strings, being able to equip more than one sword guard, being able to use a bow in combat and having different effects for your arrows, but also even unlocking some quality of life aspects, such as allowing you to coalesce all of your units on the map into one single spot, or even being able to stop the goddess mid-dance without having to be stood right next to her. If there was but one critique that I had on the action part of the game, is that I wish that we got access to So's full capabilities, or at least access to the skill tree, far earlier in the game. Thematically, I understand why they've gone with this approach, particularly in the way narratively that So is able to gain access to these powers, but I feel as though having such a limited moveset right near the beginning of the game, at least for multiple stages, that it is a bit of a detriment, and that some people might be turned off by the perceived simplicity of the combat, not realizing that it does get better later in the game. The combat of the game isn't gonna win any awards for complexity, but ultimately it felt serviceable and it didn't feel like you were undermined in any way. You felt like a capable fighter, as I said, often having the biggest impact on whether Yoshido dies or survives. And the simplicity of it works rather well, particularly when paired with a real-time strategy aspect of it. there were several moments throughout multiple different stages where I realized that one of my tactics wasn't necessarily going to work, so I'd have to shift where exactly I'd stand in the stage, or I'd have to shift around a whole lot of my units to perhaps cover some areas that I wasn't able to get to in time. And sometimes when things really started going south, where I'd completely messed something up, I was able to muddle my way through thanks to being able to clear out swathes of enemies with So, thanks to just simply relying on my own skill. Kunitsu-Gami definitely takes it easy on you at first, particularly in some of those initial stages, as you're coming to grips with the different roles and the different aspects of the game, but as you drive ever further towards that end goal, the game really begins to ramp it up. Stages begin to get far more complex, you'll have more villagers and roles to assign. In some stages, you'll actually be able to choose which path the goddess takes throughout a stage, having to weigh up whether or not you want to take the shorter path, even if it is far less defensible. And you'll have to contend with deadlier and deadlier mixes of enemies. In a lot of instances, some of the bosses that you fight come back as mini-bosses throughout the stage. The game even attempts to throw curveballs at you sometimes, where in some instances you spend the entire time dead, purely only able to control villagers, meaning there's no real-time combat. In other instances you'll be traipsing through areas in total darkness, having to contend with lighting torches if you want your villagers to fight effectively, and a few other surprises that I won't spoil. Ultimately, I thought that these rapid changes of pace were done quite well and helped alleviate any potential boredom building up simply going through the motions, and provided a nice challenge. Speaking of challenge, let's talk about boss fights, which are another aspect of Kunitsu-Gami. Boss fights typically take place in their own specific stage, where there pretty much is no day or night cycle, and you purely have to fight the boss. You do have access to your villagers the majority of these boss fights, allowing you to assign roles as usual and place them around strategically, but they pretty much straight up are just action sequences, where you'll have to rely on your own skills to prevail. Whenever you beat a boss fight or you beat a stage, you effectively unlock a new stage or boss fight to go and tackle. Though the game does offer a modicum of replay value by allowing you to tackle tasks that you might not have completed the first time through. These tasks can be as simple as don't have the carpenter repair any of the pieces of defense in a stage, to some of the more challenging things like don't use any rations or don't let So or Yoshido take any damage whatsoever, which in some stages is definitely easier said than done. Completing these tasks nets you a tangible reward. In some instances, you unlock equipable items with unique effects, and in others, you unlock a currency that you can use to upgrade So, as well as any of the roles that you currently have. For me, these were a decent enough incentive to push me to go back and replay some levels. You're also able to revisit any stage that you've previously beaten as a base. This allows you to free roam any given stage and repair some parts of the village that have deteriorated. Though a lot of these repairs will often come with a wait time, perhaps pushing you to go play other stages in the meantime. Ultimately, repairing a base entirely nets you a permanent upgrade, such as an increase to the amount of rations you can carry or the amount of crystals that you can carry. It's not necessarily a new concept that's going to light the world on fire, but I thought it was a nice addition. And that brings me to my final verdict for Kunitsu-Gami Path of the Goddess. I really enjoyed my time with the game, going in not necessarily knowing what to expect, but coming out the other side pleasantly surprised. There's enough depth to the combat and the real-time strategy aspect to the game that I didn't feel as though it was a compromise between the two where it ultimately failed to reach the peaks that it needed to. In a sea of remakes and remasters, it's great to see Capcom tackle a new IP. And if this game seems interesting to you in any way, I definitely recommend going out and playing the demo before making up your mind. And with that, we come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it or found it informative, then definitely leave a like and subscribe, as there's more review content on the way. With all that said and done, it has been me, DevilNeverCry. I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next video.